Bewitched, 1964 to 1972, cast a timeless spell with its witty dialogue, magical mischief, and unforgettable characters. But while audiences remember the show for its charm and laughter, the real lives of many cast members were marked by tragedy. From unexpected illnesses to personal battles hidden from the spotlight, several stars who once lit up the screen with joy faced heartbreaking ends. Some died far too young, while others struggled with fading fame and personal demons. In this reflection, we honor the talented actors of Bewitched who are no longer with us, and reveal the bittersweet stories behind their passing. Elizabeth Montgomery was born on April 15, 1933, and took on the role of Samantha Stevens in 1964, when she was 31 years old. With her twitching nose and graceful presence, Samantha became an icon of charm, intelligence, and domestic rebellion, bridging the world of magic and the mundane with wit and warmth. Yet, behind Montgomery's composed exterior lay a torrent of personal contradictions. Born into Hollywood royalty, her father, actor Robert Montgomery, was distant and controlling, and her childhood was marked by emotional neglect and relentless pressure to succeed. She often spoke of emotional silence in her home and later revealed she had lived under a mask for much of her early life. As her career bloomed, so did her inner battles. She clashed bitterly with co-stars and producers, particularly over creative control, and her off-screen affair with Bewitched director Richard Michaels broke up 2 marriages and ultimately killed the show. Montgomery was known to wrestle with alcohol in private and was described by insiders as deeply unpredictable. Her most public career failure came in the mid-1980s with a Broadway comeback attempt that flopped disastrously, drawing savage reviews and ending her stage ambitions. Her personal life was riddled with failed marriages and a tense relationship with her children, especially her daughter, who later accused her of emotional absence. Montgomery died of colon cancer on May 18, 1995, in Beverly Hills at the age of 62. Her estate, comprising multiple properties, jewelry, and investment accounts, was valued at approximately $20 million, yet disputes over her will fracture her family and led to years of bitter legal battles. Despite the sunny legacy of Samantha, her real life ended in unresolved tensions and quiet heartbreak. David White was born on April 4, 1916, and began playing the role of Larry Tate on Bewitched in 1964, at the age of 48. As the ingratiating, money-hungry advertising executive, Larry Tate was a master manipulator, changing his tune to please clients and bosses alike, often with a smile that veiled ruthless ambition. Audiences loved to hate him, and his hypocritical antics became one of the show's comedic pillars. Off-screen, White's life was riddled with hidden grief and emotional wounds that he concealed under a stoic exterior. Born into a fractured family in Depression-era Colorado, David's father abandoned the family early, and he was raised by a mother battling mental illness. His early life was defined by emotional neglect, which fostered a need for control and secrecy that haunted him in adulthood. Despite a classical acting education, he struggled for years on the margins of Hollywood, frequently overlooked for leading roles due to his harsh demeanor and unwillingness to flatter directors. His biggest career disgrace came in 1974 when, after being cast in a new sitcom pilot, he was abruptly fired due to behind-the-scenes disputes with a producer, who later accused him of being impossible to direct and paranoid about betrayal. Personal tragedy soon followed. His first wife, Mary, died during childbirth in 1958, and decades later, his only son, Jonathan, died in the 1988 Lockerbie bombing, a loss White never recovered from. Friends say he withdrew almost entirely from social life, spiraling into a quiet depression. He was rumored to have had discreet relationships with men during a time when being openly bisexual could destroy a career, something he reportedly feared more than death. David White died on November 27, 1990, of a heart attack at the age of 74 in North Hollywood. He left behind a modest estate, including his Studio City home, residuals from Bewitched, and investments in antique cars and classic Hollywood memorabilia. His net worth at death was estimated at $3 to $5 million. Dick Sargent, born Richard Stanford Cox on April 19, 1930, in Carmel-by-the-Sea, California, assumed the role of Darren Stevens in Bewitched in 1969 at the age of 39, replacing the ailing Dick York. His portrayal was notably calmer and more controlled, offering a softer, more tolerant husband amid his wife's supernatural hijinks. Yet Sargent's life off-camera bore little resemblance to the cheery sitcom world. He was born into affluence. His father was a World War I hero turned corporate executive, but that wealth masked emotional abandonment. Sent to boarding school at a young age, he described his childhood as lonely and loveless, filled with pressure to conform and conceal. Sargent knew he was gay from a young age, but hid it for decades in fear of career suicide. His early Hollywood years were a struggle. He was often cast as bland romantic leads in B-movies, and when he pushed for more dramatic roles, he faced quiet blackballing. Rumors of his sexuality swirled in the late 1960s, and several producers dropped him without explanation. He was notoriously labeled cold and aloof by coworkers, though many now believe it was emotional armor from years of self-denial. One of his greatest career failures came in the early 1970s when he was abruptly dropped from a starring role in a planned NBC drama after a tabloid threatened to publish photos of him with a male companion. In his private life, he had numerous secretive relationships, often with closeted Hollywood insiders, but none lasted more than a few years. His long-term partner Albert Williams was his anchor in later years, but their relationship remained mostly private. Sargent publicly came out in 1991, calling himself a retroactive role model, but the revelation came too late to reverse the decades of industry rejection. He battled depression, alcoholism, and prostate cancer, which ultimately claimed his life on July 8, 1994, in Los Angeles at age 64. He left behind modest assets, including a home, residuals from syndicated reruns, and a net worth of roughly $1.50 to $2 million. Agnes Morehead was born on December 6, 1900, and took on the unforgettable role of Endora in Bewitched in 1964, when she was 64 years old. Endora, the flamboyant, sardonic mother-in-law with a distaste for mortals and a flair for theatrics, became one of the most iconic characters in television history. But behind that theatrical brilliance was a life full of secrets, religious contradictions, and repressed traumas. Morehead was raised in a deeply religious home where expressions of emotion were discouraged, and she endured a rigid upbringing under the watch of a Presbyterian minister father. Her childhood was marked by scarcity and strict discipline, and she once confessed in a letter that she felt unloved and unseen throughout her youth. Although known for her piety, she reportedly carried a Bible everywhere. Morehead was also surrounded by swirling rumors of secret romantic relationships, particularly with women. She never publicly addressed her sexuality, but decades of speculation pointed to intense emotional ties with female companions, including actresses Debbie Reynolds and Anne Shirley. Her career was marred by one haunting decision: accepting a role in The Conqueror, 1956, which was shot near nuclear testing grounds in Utah. Morehead, along with dozens of cast members, later developed cancer. On the set of Bewitched, she was notoriously difficult, known for lecturing crew members on morality, storming off set during scenes she deemed inappropriate, and refusing to work with co-stars she considered frivolous. She had a contentious relationship with actor Dick York, once calling him unprofessional and vulgar during a heated exchange. Though she projected a grand image, Morehead was tormented by feelings of spiritual failure and artistic regret, especially as she aged. Diagnosed with uterine cancer in 1973, she spent her final months in seclusion at the Methodist Hospital in Rochester, Minnesota, where she died on April 30, 1974, at the age of 73. Her estate, estimated at $5 million, included a vast collection of art, religious texts, and rare books, as well as properties in Beverly Hills and Ohio. Dick York was born on September 4, 1928, and took on the role of Darren Stevens in Bewitched in 1964 at the age of 36. His portrayal of the earnest, often overwhelmed husband trying to keep peace between his magical wife and the human world made him beloved by audiences for his everyman charm and nervous energy. But the role's sitcom simplicity masked a life spiraling into darkness. York's childhood in Fort Wayne, Indiana, was marred by poverty, a violent alcoholic father, and a mother who turned a blind eye to the abuse. He started working in radio at 15, not out of passion, but to escape the misery of home. His life-changing injury came on the set of They Came to Cordura, 1959, when he tore muscles along his spine during a physically demanding scene. The injury marked the beginning of a brutal decline. Doctors overprescribed opioids, and York soon found himself addicted, caught in a vicious cycle of dependency and self-loathing. His erratic behavior on the Bewitched set, frequent absences, memory lapses, and collapsing on set made him difficult to work with. Though he maintained a reputation for kindness among castmates, executives had no patience for his suffering. After being replaced by Dick Sargent in 1969, York's career never recovered. Attempts to return to television failed repeatedly, in part due to his frail appearance and rumors of drug dependency. At home, his long-suffering wife Joan supported him emotionally and financially, but their marriage was strained by years of financial ruin and York's chronic depression. He tried to reinvent himself as an advocate for the homeless in his final years, founding Acting for Life, but his body was too far gone. By the early 1990s, he was using oxygen tanks, weighed less than 100 pounds, and lived in near obscurity. He died on February 20, 1992, in East Grand Rapids, Michigan, at the age of 63 from complications of emphysema. At the time of his death, his assets amounted to little more than a second-hand car and residuals from Bewitched, totaling a net worth under $1 million. George Tobias, born July 14, 1901, in New York City, stepped into the role of Abner Kravitz in Bewitched in 1964 at age 63. As the long-suffering, skeptical neighbor, Tobias masterfully balanced comic timing with a gruff exterior, making Abner a fan favorite for his oblivious reactions to his wife Gladys's constant hysteria over the supernatural. Raised in a poor Jewish household in a tenement during the early 1900s, Tobias suffered from childhood malnutrition and relentless anti-Semitic bullying, often fighting just to make it home from school. These early scars left him guarded and perpetually mistrustful. As an adult, he threw himself into acting, finding success on stage and later in film, but his outspoken leftist views in the 1930s, he openly supported labor movements and anti-fascist causes, would later come back to haunt him during the McCarthy era. Secret FBI surveillance plagued him in the late 1940s, and he was unofficially blacklisted for several years, losing out on numerous roles, including a major supporting part in On the Waterfront. Professionally, he was known for his quiet intensity, but privately, he was deeply tormented. Though he never married, Tobias had a volatile years-long affair with actress and makeup artist Millicent Patrick. Their relationship was marked by possessiveness, screaming matches, and periods of total silence. Colleagues described Tobias as generous yet emotionally erratic. He was known to sabotage rehearsals when he felt insecure or overshadowed. His greatest regret, reportedly shared with a close friend near the end of his life, was choosing bitterness over forgiveness with estranged family members and lovers. The most bizarre chapter of his life came posthumously, after dying of bladder cancer on February 27, 1980. In Los Angeles at age 78, the hearse carrying his body was stolen by joyriders who abandoned it in a parking lot when they discovered the corpse. That scandal briefly made headlines but was quickly buried like Tobias himself. His estate, which included a quiet bungalow in Studio City, vintage Hollywood memorabilia, and investments in municipal bonds, was valued at approximately $3 million. Sandra Gould, born July 23, 1916 in Brooklyn, was 50 years old when she took over the iconic role of Gladys Kravitz in Bewitched in 1966, following the death of Alice Pierce. Her version of Gladys, paranoid, shrill, and comically hysterical, became a defining caricature of the nosy neighbor archetype, forever cementing her place in sitcom history. Born into a fractured immigrant household, her father abandoned the family when she was 5, and her mother, a seamstress, raised her in near poverty. Bullied for her nasal voice and buck teeth, Sandra grew up fiercely defensive and developed a biting wit that both charmed and alienated those around her. She entered showbiz through radio, but was never quite accepted by her peers. Her career was marked by volatility. Known among casting directors as difficult, she was blacklisted temporarily in the 1950s after allegedly spreading damaging rumors about a co-star's sexuality. Her most public scandal emerged during the early 1960s when she had an affair with a married TV executive, which tabloids exposed, leading to her being dropped from several high-profile roles. Despite these setbacks, she clawed her way into Bewitched, though it was no secret she had campaigned ruthlessly to get the role. Insiders whispered about anonymous letters sent to producers questioning other actresses' reputations. Her personal life was equally rocky. Married to broadcasting executive Larry Burns, their marriage deteriorated amid rumors of emotional abuse and affairs. Their only child later distanced himself from Gould, calling her controlling and obsessed with status. Though she penned a humor book titled Always Say Maybe, those close to her said it masked a deep bitterness over her waning fame. In her later years, Gould suffered from reclusiveness and hoarding tendencies, rarely leaving her Burbank home. She died on July 20, 1999, just 3 days shy of her 83rd birthday, following a stroke after heart surgery. At the time of her death, her assets included residual checks, personal memorabilia, and a modest home valued at roughly $1.7 million. Casey Rogers, born Josie Imogene Rogers on December 15, 1925, joined Bewitched in 1966 at the age of 41, replacing Irene Vernon as Louise Tate, the poised and fashion-forward wife of ad executive Larry Tate. As the sensible counterpart to the show's chaotic magic, Louise was adored for her elegant composure and subtle empathy towards Samantha, and she resonated with audiences as the kind of friend who held everything together in a world that constantly teetered on the surreal. Off-screen, however, Rogers' life was marked by turbulence, heartbreak, and quiet reinvention. Raised in a strict Baptist household during the Great Depression, her father was an abusive alcoholic who often vanished for weeks, while her mother worked tirelessly just to feed the family. She learned early to mask pain with charm. After being typecast in B-movie roles, Rogers' career nosedived when she allegedly had a heated argument with a producer who was later revealed to be a known predator in the industry, costing her prime opportunities and leading to a quiet Hollywood exile. Though she eventually secured the Louise Tate role, rumors lingered of her aggressive push to oust Vernon, and some insiders claimed she manipulated studio politics to secure her spot. Her personal life was equally fraught. Her marriage to Walter Winslow ended in a bitter divorce, amid accusations of domestic abuse and infidelity. Their children, caught in the crossfire, became estranged from her during the 1970s, and she struggled to repair the damage for decades. Rogers also suffered from chronic depression and was reportedly addicted to painkillers in the 1980s following a series of surgeries. Later in life, she turned to motocross and crafting books as a form of therapy, becoming a surprising advocate for women in extreme sports. Yet despite the public-facing optimism, she remained deeply wounded by her early rejections. Casey Rogers died on July 6, 2006, in Los Angeles, at age 80, from complications due to throat cancer and a stroke. Her estate, including intellectual property from her books, a modest home in Studio City, and licensing royalties, was valued at approximately $2.5 million. Alice Pierce was born on October 16, 1917, and portrayed the character of Gladys Kravitz in Bewitched starting in 1964, when she was 47 years old. Gladys was the neurotic, highly strung neighbor whose constant peeking through curtains and shrill exclamations made her both hilarious and pitiable. Her character served as a symbolic warning about domestic paranoia and gaslighting, always dismissed by her oblivious husband as crazy. Pierce's delivery, marked by exaggerated facial contortions and an almost cartoonish voice, was unforgettable and her comic timing flawless. Behind the scenes, however, Pierce's life was a tragic series of betrayals and battles. Born into a wealthy but emotionally barren family in Manhattan, she was sent to Europe as a child, where a devastating fall off a swing left her with a permanently disfigured jaw. Her parents, embarrassed by her appearance, encouraged her to pursue funny roles rather than dramatic ones. The trauma of that physical injury haunted her through adolescence, and her comedic persona became a lifelong mask. Despite early success in theater, Pierce was often rejected in Hollywood for her looks, called too odd for lead roles. She was painfully aware that her talent alone would never win her the respect of Hollywood elites. Her one marriage to composer John Rocks was marked by years of infertility treatments and private heartbreak. When Pierce was diagnosed with terminal ovarian cancer in 1963, she refused to tell anyone on set, not even her closest co-stars. She worked through pain and exhaustion, taping episodes while wearing wigs to conceal her hair loss. She died on March 3, 1966, in Hollywood at the age of 48, just days after completing her final episodes. Her assets included a modest home in the Hollywood Hills, some savings, and minimal royalties, bringing her estimated net worth at the time of death to under $900,000. Bernard Fox, born Bernard Lawson on May 11, 1927, in Port Talbot, Wales, first appeared on Bewitched in 1966 at the age of 39, stepping into the scene-stealing role of Dr. Bombay, the whimsical, eccentric witch doctor summoned in times of magical misfortune. With his flamboyant costumes, ridiculous cures, and unmistakable catchphrase, calling Dr. Bombay, "Emergency! Come right away," he added a flamboyant comedic edge to the show. Born into a long line of performers, Fox grew up in the shadow of a family legacy that demanded constant reinvention. Behind the scenes, he battled deep insecurities about being typecast as a buffoonish Brit, especially in an era when genuine versatility often went unrewarded. Though he made notable appearances in Titanic, 1997, and The Mummy, 1999, Fox was often pigeonholed and quietly resented the industry's refusal to see him as a serious dramatic actor. In private, he struggled with compulsive gambling and was rumored to have once lost a significant portion of his savings during a losing streak in Monte Carlo, an incident that nearly caused the sale of his home in Beverly Hills. He had a long-standing rivalry with another British actor on the Hollywood circuit and was once accused of sabotaging a colleague's audition by leaking false information to casting agents. His marriage, though presented publicly as stable, endured years of separation and quiet resentments. Rumors swirl that he had a long-term affair with a younger stage actress, which he neither confirmed nor denied. In his final years, Fox turned to the occult, not as a joke, but as a serious interest, developing an obsession with vintage grimoires and collecting rare books on witchcraft and mysticism, a pursuit that alarmed some of his peers. He died of heart failure on December 14, 2016, in Van Nuys, California, at the age of 89. His estate, estimated at $5 to $7 million, included real estate, residuals from decades of television work, and an expansive personal collection of theatrical memorabilia, including items he had allegedly borrowed from closed sets without permission. Marian Lauren was born on August 12, 1883, and began portraying the bumbling but lovable Aunt Clara in Bewitched in 1964 at the remarkable age of 81. Her character, known for misfired spells and a quirky obsession with doorknobs, brought a peculiar sweetness and gentle chaos to the show. Audiences adored Clara's vulnerability and childlike confusion, and many were unaware that Lauren's personal eccentricities directly informed her performance. She truly did hoard antique knobs in real life, filling entire closets of her apartment. But behind the gentle facade was a complex and wounded woman. Born into a stern, puritanical household in Pennsylvania, Lauren endured a lonely childhood shadowed by religious guilt and social isolation. Her marriage to British playwright Walter Hackett was both creatively fruitful and emotionally taxing. Hackett reportedly engaged in multiple affairs, and while Lauren turned a blind eye, it left lasting scars. She hid her pain through meticulous control, insisting on private dressing rooms, traveling with her own linens, and refusing physical contact on set. Her career spanned decades, but by the time television rose in popularity, Lauren found herself dismissed as too old for anything except comic relief. Her biggest professional humiliation came when she attempted a Broadway comeback in Mrs. McThing, a role she had fought for, but critics eviscerated her performance, calling it wooden and misplaced, a failure that plunged her into a depression she rarely spoke of again. She found redemption in Bewitched, but by then, her health was in decline. Lauren died from a heart attack on May 9, 1968, in Manhattan at the age of 84. Her estate included a rent-controlled apartment, vintage costume jewelry, personal effects from decades on stage, and a small savings account. Her net worth was valued around $1.5 to $2 million. Mabel Albertson was born on July 24, 1901, and made her first appearance in Bewitched in 1964 at the age of 63, embodying Phyllis Stevens, the overbearing, neurotic mother-in-law whose every visit brought Darren closer to a nervous breakdown. With her dramatic fainting spells and signature sick headaches, Phyllis added just the right amount of comic tension to the suburban witchcraft chaos. Raised in a working-class Jewish family in Massachusetts, she experienced financial instability throughout her youth and was sent to live with relatives when her parents couldn't afford to care for her. Her early years in vaudeville were marked by exploitation. She once revealed she had been pressured into compromising situations by male producers in exchange for stage time, a trauma she rarely spoke of again. Although she maintained a strong front in Hollywood, Albertson harbored deep resentment over being typecast as the shrill matron, a stereotype she felt reduced her true acting range. Her relationship with her younger brother, actor Jack Albertson, was fraught with jealousy and professional rivalry. Though close in childhood, they drifted apart over accusations that Jack had undermined her chances at a major film role in the late 1950s. Albertson's personal life was equally troubled. She endured a bitter divorce in the 1940s from her only husband, a minor producer known for his infidelity and gambling debts. She never remarried and spent most of her later years in isolation, relying heavily on sleeping pills and tranquilizers to cope with anxiety and insomnia, prescriptions that, according to one assistant, she often abused. In her final decade, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. a decline that was kept out of the press but described by caregivers as cruel and terrifying. Her once sharp wit faded, and she was said to cry out for her long-dead parents and brother in moments of confusion. She died on September 28, 1982, in Santa Monica, California, at the age of 81. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated between $2 to $3 million, mostly accumulated from radio, stage, and television royalties. Alice Ghostly, born August 14, 1923, began portraying Esmeralda on Bewitched in 1969 at age 46, stepping into the void left by the irreplaceable Marian Lauren. Esmeralda was shy, nervous, and prone to spell-casting disasters, yet audiences found her lovable in her awkwardness. That same anxious charm echoed Alice's real-life persona, an actress beloved for her quirks, but haunted by lifelong self-doubt and the quiet torment of never feeling truly enough. Born in Eve, Missouri, into a religious household, Ghostly lost her father at a young age and was raised by a stern, emotionally detached mother who discouraged creative pursuits. Her childhood was filled with silent dinners and stifled dreams. She escaped through college theater, but that didn't erase the years of suppressed trauma. Ghostly's stage success, including a Tony win, was always overshadowed by more glamorous peers. In Hollywood, she was seen as character actor material and was often passed over for lead roles, fueling a bitterness she hid with humor. Her career decline in the late 70s was swift and unexplained. Whispers around the industry cited clashes with producers, her erratic rehearsal habits, and a refusal to conform to expected femininity. Ghostly never had children and often joked about it, but friends later revealed that she had suffered multiple miscarriages in the 1950s, grief she buried beneath eccentric characters and exaggerated laughter. Her marriage to actor Felice Orlandi, though enduring, was more companionship than passion, with long periods of separation and rumors of private tension. In her later years, Ghostly battled colon cancer and debilitating strokes that left her partially paralyzed, though she refused to let the public see her suffering. She died on September 21, 2007, at age 84 in Studio City, California. Her estate, modest by Hollywood standards, consisted of residual checks, a small bungalow in the valley, and personal memorabilia, altogether valued at around $1 to $2 million. Dick Wilson was born on July 30, 1916, and joined Bewitched in 1965 at age 49, portraying various intoxicated onlookers who stumbled into magical mayhem across 18 episodes. His recurring role as the bewildered drunk added a quirky human reaction to the show's supernatural oddities, and while small, his characters offered a reliable laugh that viewers grew to expect. But behind the chuckles, Wilson's own early life was rooted in deep instability. Born in Preston, Lancashire, England, he immigrated to Canada as a child, enduring years of emotional detachment from his authoritarian father and witnessing frequent domestic arguments. A lifelong need to be liked, rooted in that early emotional void, drove him to show business. Wilson's professional reputation was paradoxical, publicly funny, privately demanding. Colleagues quietly criticized his obsessive control over his lines, with some accusing him of strategically upstaging other bit players. Though never caught in any headline-grabbing scandal, his career was built on relentless self-promotion and an almost pathological fear of fading into obscurity. That fear materialized in the mid-1970s when he became trapped in the persona of Mr. Whipple from over 500 charming commercials, a role that brought him fame but also typecasting. Off-screen, he struggled with alcoholism in the 1960s, a dark irony given the drunken characters he often played. He sobered up after a near-fatal car accident in 1971 that he kept hidden from the press, fearing it would destroy his wholesome image. Wilson's marriage to Meg Wilson was long but strained. Friends described him as emotionally distant and obsessed with financial security. He hoarded money, investing in real estate and insurance to stave off a retirement he feared would erase his identity. When he died of natural causes on November 18, 2007, in Woodland Hills at the age of 91, he left behind a fortune worth an estimated $5 million, including commercial royalties, property holdings in Burbank, and a massive archive of TV memorabilia. Irene Vernon, born January 16, 1922, in Mishawaka, Indiana, took on the role of Louise Tate in Bewitched in 1964 at the age of 42. As the stylish and graceful wife of advertising executive Larry Tate, Louise represented the epitome of mid-century suburban femininity, polished, pleasant, and ever-present at cocktail parties. Though not central to the plot, she served as a social bridge between the mortal and magical worlds, offering Samantha a human confidant. But Irene's real life was far from the serene domestic image she portrayed on screen. Born Irene Vernon, she came from a deeply troubled background. Her father abandoned the family when she was 10, and her mother struggled with alcoholism, frequently disappearing for days. Vernon was passed between relatives throughout her teens, learning early on to mask emotion with charm. Arriving in Hollywood during the 1940s, she reinvented herself and landed minor roles in B-movies and radio plays, but never managed to break into stardom. When she finally found consistent work on Bewitched, it should have been her moment, but internal politics ended that too soon. Her biggest professional downfall came when she publicly supported head writer Danny Arnold after he clashed with the producers. Labeled disloyal, she was quickly written off the show in 1966, a move that humiliated her and effectively ended her career. Friends said she never recovered from the betrayal and became reclusive in the years that followed. Vernon married a wealthy businessman, Charles Rosenberg, in the 1970s, but their marriage was fraught with infidelity and long separations. Though she changed her name to Irene Rosenberg, she rarely appeared in public again. Rumors of depression, pill dependency, and bitterness surrounded her final decades, though no one close to her ever confirmed them. She died on April 21, 1998, in South Bend, Indiana, at the age of 76 from congestive heart failure and coronary artery disease. Her assets at the time of death were minimal: a modest home, some residual payments, and a net worth estimated at under $500,000. Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from Bewitched who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded of how deeply television can touch our hearts. Join us next time as we look back at more stars who left us too soon, but whose stories continue to shine.